everybody, I am Sarah. Welcome back to Blind Guardian Reviews, Banger's once ever metal review show. Gotta make sure to remind you, we got stuff on Patreon. Make sure you subscribe, yada, yada, yada. Let's go. This week, I am obviously reviewing the long awaited orchestral album by the German masters of power, speed, and symphonic metal.
Find the key to be free.
Now, before we dive into this review, we need to make this crystal clear. This is an orchestral album by Blind Guardian, not a power metal album with orchestral flourishes. It's legitimately an orchestral album made in conjunction with the City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra. On it, Blind Guardian has billed the Blind Guardian TWILIGHT Orchestra. Their album is called Legacy of the Darklands, and it's out today via Nuclear Blast Records. Intrigued? Irritated? Confused, elated, stoked that Hansi, well, basically one of the best living vocalists, is being backed by a goddamn orchestra? Well, me too. Let's dive in. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to rein in and contextualize Blind Guardian because I think they are the pinnacle of power metal. This German band first formed back in 1984 in Krefeld, Germany as Lucifer's Heritage, and then they rebranded as Blind Guardian in 1986. After starting out as more of a speed power metal oriented band with their magnificent debut, Battalions of Fear, this wonderful bad boy right here, and its follow-up, Follow the Blind, this other magnificent bad boy right here. They've since gone to incorporate more styles and methods, and they've become basically more bombastic. Hell, their third album, Tales from the Twilight World, it's somewhere on here. I don't need to peel out every single one. You know they're here. Was already hinting at their future bombastic style. It was integrating more backing vocalists, hinting at symphonic elements to come. By the time they released what is a lot of fans' favorites, Imaginations from the Other Side, they were fully transitioning into this huge and symphonic style, and that approach has simply increased as the years have passed. Now, an attempt to rein all this in. All throughout Blind Guardian's tenure, the band has excelled at those infinitely sing-alongable choruses, and their concerts are just kind of, well, whole crowd sing-alongs. They're one of those rare bands that is extremely consistent in their evolution and their quality, and since day one, they have been fronted by Hansi Kirsch, whose voice is akin in quality and diversity to both Halford and Dickinson. He is joined by guitarists Andre Olbrich and Marcus Siepen. The lineup is rounded out by drummer Frederick Imke, E-H-M-K-E, who was a latecomer in 2005. The result of all of this is a band with an enormous impact on their genre. But let's fast forward to current day. All right, so as I said, this is a fully orchestral album, and indeed is a concept album based on a story with numerous narrative interludes. Before you protest, think about this allegorically. Blind Guardian has grown increasingly grandiose and orchestral over the decades, and indeed they've worked with orchestras previously. For example, on the album At the Edge of Time, they already worked with the City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra, as they did on this album. They've also used narrators before, and those same narrators were featured on the album Nightfall in Middle-earth. So the precedent is here, it is set. The band has been talking about this album for some time, and the wheels have been clearly in motion for this project for a very, very long time. So, we know the following. This is an orchestral album featuring Hansi and the Philharmonic Orchestra, which might automatically reduce the fan base of fans who wanted another Blind Guardian album. Is this album, with its many vinyl and CD editions, a necessary purchase? Or is this an album exclusively for Blind Guardian completists and symphony orchestra fans? Let's find out. So, we'll start with the best parts. First up, this album is based on a story by the German fantasy author Marcus Heitz, whose latest novel, Die Dunklen Land, was released on March 1st, 2019. That book is set in 1629 and is the prequel to Legacy of the Darklands, which is the album by the Blind Guardian TWILIGHT Orchestra. Both tell the story of a mercenary named Nicholas and his involvement in the 30 Years' War, and it kind of reiterates his secrets and loves and heartbreak and passion. What this means in practice is that you've got an album that oscillates between short narrative tracks and these very grandiose, epic, symphonic songs. Truth be told, upon the first few listens, the numerous narrative tracks kind of felt rather grating. But after forcing myself to really sit down and give it 3 or 4 serious, deep, immersive listens, I settled into the rhythm of the album and started just feeling really impressed. And then I got into the double-digit plays, and I was like, holy shit, of course, I love this. I love Blind Guardian, and right here I should give a shout out to my partner who I live with, because he loves Blind Guardian more than anyone I've ever met, and that is why there are so many Blind Guardian things. Most of this collection is his. So Sean, love you. So with each video I watched, with each interview I read, each time I listened to the album, I was pulled deeper and deeper into the universe and the work, and it made the whole experience that much more rewarding. To be frank, of course, I'm not an expert on orchestral music, but I do know that the absolutely magnificent vocals of Hansi against epic symphonic music frequently made goosebumps rise on my skin. For example, track 5, Dark Cloud Rising. Well, it's the single most astounding song on the album. The crescendo comes quickly, and it made me tear up. And it's got this really like flitty, springy, joyous quality. And hearing the strings, the brass, the percussion, and the woodwinds in conjunction, everything just sounds so big and epic. And it made me tear up multiple times throughout the track alone. Another highlight is track 13, dubbed Treason. Essentially, every single song on this album with a big crescendo has a nice emotional arc, and it's, orchestras excel at this. They're intended to make you feel something, and I definitely felt something listening to this record. Later on, track 19, Harvester of Souls, it starts out really ominous with these creeping segments, and again features numerous backing vocalists who make the whole song feel like a journey. The grandiosity actually reminded me very strongly of the track The Grand Parade, which is the strongest track from the band's 2015 album Beyond the Red Mirror, and frankly, I think one of their best songs, which is not a popular opinion. Now, let's talk about the worst parts. So, worst parts. Definitely took some work to feel invested in the story of this album, and hell, lots of Blind Guardian albums are long, but this one was just initially, a slog to get through. But here I have to say again, and I've said this in a few reviews previously, patience is a virtue. This album became better and better the further invested in it I became, and the more times I listened to it and the more times I've read about it, the more that I appreciated it. To rely on some cliches, it's like a fine wine, it's a grower, not a shower. It'll reward those with patience. And basically, if you're someone who needs instant gratification, I wouldn't bother with it, because this album actually needs listeners to give it proper time and space, or really not bother with it at all. Now for the final thoughts. To use the phrase of people who are younger than me, Blind Guardian gives me feelings. Their discography is magnificent, it's got minor missteps, their live performance is really enjoyable, and to see this project finally coming to fruition after the band has discussed it for decades, and cough, we put 2 links in the video description for interviews I've done with Hansi about this project. So straight up, I am biased about this album. I've been waiting for it for a long time, but what does that mean for a rating? Legacy of the Darklands isn't instantly gratifying, but it is immensely satisfying when you actually give it a proper listen and appreciate it for what it is, which is a magnificent symphonic orchestral album with the stunning vocals of Hansi, who legitimately is one of the best living vocalists. Maybe it's unnecessary for you if you're not a fan of recent/symphonic Blind Guardian, but if you're a fan who is stuck with them through till now, then it is unbelievably cool to finally hear this album in its completed form. For all these reasons, it's getting 4 skulls out of 5 here on Overkill Reviews. Now for the shoutouts. I've only got one because I talked for way too long about Blind Guardian. The album that I am recommending for you today is the new album by Wandering Oak. It's called Passage Elemental. It is independently released, out now via Bandcamp, and it sounds like Hammers of Misfortune meets some whack job blackened thrash. If you're me, then that excites you. And this band is also gonna be on tour, but you can also check them out on Facebook. Thanks for listening to this exclusive Blind Guardian review for Overkill Reviews. Bye!